Each of the first 16 channels of this mixer has 3 different possible inputs that can be utilized. The first of which is the XLR balanced input. If you recall back to when we talked about the most common plug types you'll encounter, we looked at the XLR balanced plug type. This is commonly used for microphones and other low impedance equipment. Hence, it is what we call a mic level input. Anything plugged into this jack will be routed through the mixer's internal preamplifier to bring the signal up to line level. If the piece of equipment being plugged in, say a condenser microphone, requires phantom power, that power will be provided to it via this interface as long as the mixer's phantom power switch is activated. The next input we're going to take a look at is the 1/4-inch phone plug input. This input is a balanced one that can accept either balanced or unbalanced 1/4-inch phone plugs. Now, if you perhaps own a mic preamp that has especially appealing sound qualities, you may want to use it instead of utilizing the internal preamp on the mixing channel. In that case, you'd first plug your mic into the special preamp using an XLR connector, and then plug that preamp into the mixer via a balanced 1/4-inch phone plug. This is an ART tube preamp system. The design is a hybrid of tube and solid-state circuitry, and it has several presets to shape the tone for different types of instruments or vocals, which is really nice to have. A lot of people think tube preamps sound better than solid-state mic pre's. I tend to agree with that for certain applications. Vocals and acoustic instruments can have a warmer tone that's a lot less edgy than the all solid-state mic pre's in the mixer. A hard rock band maybe doesn't want the singer to have a warm tone. So you see, it still boils down to personal taste. Also, on the road, anything with a tube in it is another maintenance concern. But I wouldn't worry about that if it gave me the sound that I wanted. Something to remember is that on any individual channel, you can either use the XLR input or the 1/4-inch plug input, but not both at the same time. If you plug into both at the same time, you won't do any damage, but usually the only one that will work is the 1/4-inch plug. The third input for the channel is a highly useful one, as well as a little more complicated one. It's the insert I/O or insert input-output jack. It's an unbalanced 1/4-inch TRS phone plug that's bidirectional. It's usually used to insert a piece of outboard gear into the signal chain. By outboard gear, I mean equipment that is not part of the mixer and is provided separately in a rack, such as reverbs, EQs, compressors, and the like. In order for us to effectively use a channel insert on the mixing board, we need to have an insert cable. You can see here that the end that plugs into the board has a 1/4-inch connector that looks like a balanced TRS connector with its 3 conductors, but it's not. The other end of the cable actually has 2 different ends that look like unbalanced 1/4-inch connectors. Now let's take a look at how this arrangement works. We're going to try to make some sense of how an insert I/O jack works. Now, when no insert is used, you can see that the signal travels straight down the channel strip from the input to the channel fader, where the fader then determines how much of the signal is applied to the main stereo bus. When we need to insert a piece of gear into the signal chain for the channel, we obviously use an insert. Let's say that you have a good vocal processor that your singer likes. When the insert cable is plugged into the insert jack, it breaks the signal path and diverts it out over the insert cable to the cable end that is either labeled tip or send. That end of the cable is plugged into the input of the vocal processor. From there, the remaining end of the insert cable, which should either be labeled ring or return, is plugged into the output of the vocal processor. This completes the insert loop and returns the signal, along with the attributes of the vocal processor, back to the channel strip where it proceeds down to the stereo bus. You can then set any of the channel strip controls as you normally would. If the incorrect cable type is used, the insert I/O jack will not see a return signal, and the channel strip will not have anything to send down to the stereo bus. As a result, the signal will only be routed out and will not return to the mixer. From the perspective of the rear of the mixer, we see that the mic is plugged into the XLR jack and the vocal processor is plugged into the insert I/O jack using the proper cable, and all is well. The Yamaha mixer we've been using in our examples has 24 channels. The first 16 are mono or monaural, meaning a single input channel. The last 8 channels are also mono, but can be combined in pairs to create 4 stereo channels. As you can see by the diagram, there are 8 1/4-inch unbalanced phone jacks. If you have a piece of stereo equipment, such as a digital guitar effects processor, you can take the left output of the processor and plug it into the left input on the stereo channel. Then the right output of the processor can be plugged into the right input of the channel. Now you have a stereo channel. The pan control for the stereo channels is now called a balance control, but for all intents and purposes it's still used to route the signal either to the left or right main stereo bus. There are also 4 RCA pin plug inputs which will allow you to plug in equipment that has that type of plug.